So this murdered Texas couple's missing baby has finally been found after 42 years. And the story is crazy. Let's take a look. So in 1981, Dean Klaus, his wife Tina Lynn, and their baby Holly disappeared without a trace in East Texas. The only clue was from an anonymous caller who said that he had found Dean's car in California. And he claimed that 3 women in white robes drove it from Texas to California. Police were actually able to track down one of the women who called herself Sister Susan, and she claimed that Dean had joined a cult and renounced all earthly possessions. And she wouldn't tell them anything else. It actually wasn't until late last year that human remains found around the same time were confirmed to be Dean and Tina's. Dean had been beaten to death and Tina had been strangled. But that didn't answer what happened to Holly. This year, investigators were searching for human remains around where Dean and Tina were found. And that's when they got a genetics hit that Holly was alive and in Oklahoma. But get this, when they were talking to Holly, they found out that she had been left on the steps of a church in Arizona by none other than 3 women in white robes. Investigation is still pending, and they are really trying to figure out who these white-robed women are. But for now, at least we know that Holly is alive and well. An almost 70-year-old unserved warrant has been found in the Emmett Till case, meaning an arrest might finally be made. Let's look at the details. A lot of us know the case. So in 1955, Carolyn Bryant Donham accused 14-year-old Emmett Till of whistling at her and identified him to the men who later went on to lynch him. There was an arrest warrant for Carolyn, but sheriffs at the time didn't want to bother her or her small children. And the warrant went missing. That is until this week when a private search party headed by Deborah Watts, who's a cousin of Emmett Till and the head of the Emmett Till Legacy Foundation, found it in an unmarked box in a Mississippi courthouse. No arrests have ever been made in the lynching, but Carolyn is still alive. She's 80 years old, she lives in North Carolina, and she's never spoken publicly about the event. If the warrant can still legally be served to her, that would be huge, but even if it can't, this might be enough evidence to finally arrest her. The more I learn about this Georgia Guidestone bombing, the weirder it gets. Yesterday at 4 a.m., authorities said that the Georgia Guidestones were damaged in an explosion, which destroyed one of the pillars. And if you don't know, the Guidestones were built in 1980 by a man using a fake name and are referred to as America's Stonehenge. They feature a guide to humanity written in 8 different languages, which I'm going to get to in a sec. But then it was announced that it was actually a lightning strike, which this is the dimmest lightning strike I've ever seen, if that's the case. But conspiracy theorists have long been obsessed with the Guidestones because of the weird writings on them. The guide to humanity includes maintaining humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, and guiding reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity, which isn't so much a guide to humanity as it is eugenics. But the weirdest part of all of this is on the pillar that was destroyed by the explosion, it says that there is a time capsule placed 6 feet below this spot, and it's supposed to be opened on, and then no date. The rest of the pillars were actually demolished yesterday, but do we think someone was trying to get to the time capsule? Also, what could have been inside of it? Have you ever played this terrifying sleepover game? It starts like this. You and your friend must write down your name, first, middle, last, on a piece of paper, and then prick your finger and dot the piece of paper. Then you have to go around your entire house, turning off every light and every electronic. Then you have to stand in front of a closed wooden door and put the piece of paper down in front of it. Then you must also light a candle and place it on top of the paper. You need to knock on the door 22 times, with the last knock falling at midnight, and then blow out the candle. And then you've summoned the Midnight Man. There's not much known about the Midnight Man, and the only instruction is to not allow yourself to be caught. Hey, this looks like a nice house. Look at how big that yard is. Let's look at the Zillow listing. This is an estate and is being sold as is, not for the faint of heart. No, that's not a good sign. Buyers must assume responsibility for removal of all contents. Oh God, what's in there? Do not open garage door, front door, or back door. That's not leaving a lot of entrances. Well, now I gotta see what's inside. Oh no. Oh God, this is so much worse than what I thought it was gonna be. I thought as is meant that there was going to be like black mold or bad wallpaper or something. There's also a lot of emphasis on the floors and not a lot of emphasis on the ceiling, which is Never a good sign. Yeah, see how they intentionally leave the ceilings out of all the photos? But honestly, I've watched a lot of Hoarders, and this isn't even like top 10 worst for that show. Look at this trash pile as an opportunity to decorate a nursery. Less than $400,000 in New Hampshire? In this economy, I might do it. Two separate universities have made a discovery which might prove the existence of the Loch Ness Monster. Tales of the Loch Ness Monster have been around for 1,500 years, but evidence has been scarce. Some people believe that it's a stray plesiosaurus that somehow made it from dinosaur times and lives in the Loch Ness. But a big hole in this theory has always been that plesiosauruses lived in saltwater, not freshwater. And the Loch Ness is all freshwater, baby. But that's until today, when the bones of a plesiosaurus were found in an ancient Moroccan river that was totally freshwater. Though this doesn't prove the existence of the Loch Ness Monster, it does disprove the theory that a Loch Ness Monster would have died in the Loch Ness due to the fresh water. But what do you think? Is the Loch Ness Monster an ancient myth or a modern-day dinosaur? Let's take a closer look at one of Marilyn Monroe's final public appearances. On May 19, 1962, Marilyn Monroe wore the dress to sing Happy Birthday to JFK.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
But there's actually quite a bit to unpack here. For one, she was introduced at the event as the late Marilyn Monroe, which at the time people chalked it up to the fact that she was known to be late to every single social event. But seems kind of weird when you realize that months later she would pass away tragically. Also, Marilyn and JFK were having an affair at the time. Also, this is the only picture ever taken of the two of them together. People took this performance as basically proof that she and JFK were sleeping together, and conspiracy theorists afterwards believed that maybe the JFK camp had something to do with her death. But Marilyn died of an overdose of sleeping pills, and actually while she was at the event for JFK, she was fired from the movie she was on because it was known that her opiate addiction had been getting worse. But when Marilyn's body was ultimately found, her hand was draped across the phone next to her bed, leaving many to wonder if she was trying to call JFK. Another day, another Zillow nightmare. But surely this one can't be that bad. Look at all this yard space you have, and look at that nice wraparound porch. Let's look at the listing. I mean, first and foremost, it has a pending offer, so it must be good enough for someone. This home could be brought back to like new condition with complete mitigation of mold and mildew. Needs walls, ceilings, and flooring, I mean, what other parts of the house are there, removed and replaced. Okay, let's take a look. Oh, they weren't kidding. Look at the mold on all of the walls. I mean, I like that they included the box of the TV, like, look, a TV could go here. Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, this is in Montana, so I imagine it's what happens when you abandon a home in a place with seasons. How did they take pictures of this? Like, the person taking pictures must have been in a full hazmat suit. I mean, listen, if you wanted to buy a house just to burn it down, $20,000 is not that steep. More human remains were found in the rapidly drying Lake Mead, and investigators are worrying that time is running out on finding any clues. Of the 3 sets of remains found, the one that looks the most like foul play was the one found in this barrel. If you don't remember, in May, investigators found a body inside of this barrel, maybe from the late 70s or early 80s, and we know that there was a gunshot wound. And these remains are being found as Lake Mead has been rapidly drying over the last few decades. What's really interesting though is because Lake Mead used to be so deep, the bottom was so cold that bodies wouldn't decompose there, or at least would decompose very slowly, and so 2 of the bodies still have organ tissue on them. But investigators are worried because for a person that was thrown in the lake in the late 70s, witnesses to that event are getting very old. And that's also when in Vegas, which is right next to Lake Mead, the mob had a total stronghold on the area. So a lot of witnesses might just not want to talk. It seems like it's a race against the clock to find any answers on this, but hopefully we start learning something soon. Okay, so someone sent me this Zillow nightmare and I am so excited to share it with everyone. Before we get into the listing, I would like to draw everyone's attention to the sticker price, and that is $250,000. But let's look at what they have to say. Calling all investors, red flag. Cash hard money offers only, $250,000. And that gets paired nicely with do not enter, all caps, 3 exclamation points, cannot be safely shown. Let's take a look. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Kaylin, that looks like a shed. Yes, but maybe it's gonna wow us with the interior. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't do that either. Some of these pictures are confusing because it's like, what am I learning about the space in this photo? Am I learning that the world's largest spider lives in here? And the same goes for this one. This is just trash on the floor. The housing market in LA right now is just so dire. And the most laughable part of all of this is that on the website, it says we estimate this home will sell faster than 99% of the nearby homes. But this is easily going to take tens of thousands of dollars to repair on top of buying it. So some people blame Brittany Murphy's death on her house being haunted, and some people blame her house being haunted on Britney Spears. Let's take a deeper look. This is the house that Britney Spears lived in the early 2000s with Justin Timberlake. Apparently one night after a weekend of partying, she had a Reiki healer come and do a private session. But after he left, Britney Spears thought that he had opened a portal inside of her home while he was there. And now evil spirits were coming out of the portal and trying to push her down the stairs. Terrified, she moved out of the house. And who should move in next but Brittany Murphy, who was reportedly also terrified of the home. In December of 2009, Brittany Murphy passed away inside of the home under very mysterious circumstances. She developed extremely bad pneumonia out of nowhere. And people were quick to blame her husband for potentially poisoning her, except that he passed away 5 months later from the exact same thing. Theories surrounding the death range from toxic mold to hantavirus to spirits that came from the portal that Britney Spears' Reiki healer opened. But we're talking about all sorts of haunted homes on here, so make sure you follow along. This place was built just to live out the dark fantasies of its creator, on some unsuspecting guests. It's H.H. Holmes' Hotel of Horrors. So Holmes moved to Chicago in the late 1800s so that he could open a hotel for the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Apparently he was a hit amongst the ladies, even though I don't see it, but I guess it was slim pickings amongst those that didn't die of tuberculosis in their youth. And this hotel was full of nefarious instruments. Down in the basement there was an incinerator that was person-sized. He had a chute that went from a windowless room all the way down to the basement. There were rooms that were either completely sealed or had too many doors in order to confuse guests. Guests would often complain about their doors being jiggled at night as if someone was trying to get in their room. And as the hotel was being built, workers would constantly complain about H.H. Holmes' weird behavior. There were reports that he would ask people working on the hotel if they were willing to kill another worker for him, and if they said no, he would fire them. And this, children, is why we need unions. Not to mention a shocking number of women were disappearing from the hotel. So this is the part of the video where you get to guess what he was doing in there, and we're gonna say it together on the count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3, skeleton harvesting. That's right, he was harvesting skeletons to sell to a local medical school. This only lasted for 2 years until he was found and convicted of murder, but some reports say he killed up to 200 people in there, mostly women. Some people also believe that he was Jack the Ripper, but that is for another video. Anyways, we're gonna talk about more scary homes later, bye! This carnival act became a killer. This is the tragedy of Lobster Boy. So Grady Stiles was born with a deformity that made his hands and feet look like lobster claws. It's called ectrodactyly, and you can see he doesn't have middle fingers. This was actually really common in his family. So common, they actually opened up their own circus. But outside of the circus act, Grady was incredibly violent towards his family. So much so that there's actually a story of during a fight with his wife, he was able to somehow pull out her IUD. I hate that I read that. So in 1978, his daughter Donna starts dating this guy Jack, and that's when things turned deadly. The night before they were to be married, Jack went to see Grady in hopes of getting his approval of their marriage. But Grady met Jack with a shotgun and took his life. The prisons at the time actually weren't able to accommodate disabled people, so he just got 15 years of probation. And his reign of terror actually continued until his wife put a hit out on him and hired their 17-year-old neighbor to do it. And Grady was killed after serving no time for any of his crimes, and his wife got 12 years in jail and the neighbor got 27. A 5,000-year-old Spanish Stonehenge has just emerged, and it's all thanks to climate change. So Spain is having a terrible drought right now, and part of the Valdecañas reservoir has dried up. And in the area that has dried up, this stone structure has been found. It's officially known as the Dolmen of Guadaparal, and very little is known about who constructed it or why. Many archaeologists believe that it's a tomb due to the fact that remains have been found nearby. They also believe that the rocks that are standing upright probably had other rocks on top of them, kind of making a table shape. Dolmens are actually pretty common, but we still have really no idea what they were for. Some have evidence that they were tombs, while others just contain animal bones and pottery. So I'm very curious to see what else is found at this site.